All right, and we are live. Hey, everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. Thought I would sit down and do a video for you guys and let's start another one of these. And I went ahead and deleted it. I got a phone call that came through. I was not expecting, completely unexpected. So I shut it down, deleted it. Let's just restart. So let's talk a little bit about low carb diets. So I have oftentimes kind of gone back and forth when people don't understand as a coach. Even for clients of mine, I use both approaches. So I've had that come up like on my Facebook earlier. Someone said, but you promoted this, I don't understand. Is this flip-flop or confusion? And it's like, no, I'm just not dogmatic in my approach. And because I run both high and low carb diets for clients, I tend to discuss both because I use different paradigms for different people. Like literally right now, at this exact moment, I have clients who run really high carb and low fat, and I have the reverse. I have both types right now. So in that context, I try to discuss both groups, but the nutrition is different. All right. So if you're going to run a really high carbohydrate diet, you need to extremely limit saturated fat. Okay. In other words, if you want to eat a significant amount of carbs, your saturated fat in your diet needs to be pretty low. If it's not, it's going to create problems. And hopefully people grasp that concept. But then when it comes to the lower carb diets, as long as they're healthier sources, you can get away with more saturated fats with reduced inflammation. And that's what we have to look at. There's literature to support that. Like if you look at like a lot of Dr. Bullock stuff, looking at the athletes and other people, of showing that for a lot of his people who are exercising and working out, they have very low inflammatory markers, still eating fair amounts of saturated fat on ketogenic type diets. But the difference is they're also not eating junk fat. And like, for example, like most of you, if you look into someone like Dr. Spencer Nadolsky, for example, I've seen him write about this, right? He's one of the doctors who lift, right? He's a medical doctor who promotes people eating healthy food, lots of protein, lifting weights. Pretty well known for this. I saw him say that when he deals with clients with different blood work stuff, that he goes, all of the keto diet clients he has, his patients who eat butter, have terrible blood work, and you have to put them on a statin or they can come off the butter. He's like, it's without fail. Without fail, every single time. He's like, but the ones who eat mostly just clean whole foods, because butter is a refined food. You can't deny that. I'm sorry, you can't. Then this stripped of its nutritional value and cardioprotective benefits. Milk has cardioprotective benefits, right? But when you strip all that stuff out, it jacks your lipids way up. And it's the same with things like bacon and other stuff. So people who follow those sort of diets, what you end up finding is that once they're keto adapted, they'll burn more saturated fat. It clears the bloodstream faster. This is what the studies show. As long as they're not eating too much junk and they're eating cardioprotective stuff. So in that case, when there's nearly zero carbohydrate in their diet, the steak and eggs doesn't cause a problem if they're getting sufficient antioxidants and stuff with cardioprotective things. So again, they're eating their vegetables. Okay, that's kind of like why I tell people a proper low carb diet isn't steak and eggs, it's steak, eggs, and avocado. Throw some broccoli and spinach in, you're golden. Okay, understand that matters in that context, the completeness of the diet. But the difference is when you're running high carb versus low carbs, a lot of stuff shifts in your paradigm, and you don't really mix and match. You need to really know what you're doing. And I use both approaches. I use both approaches successfully with clients and with myself. So again, understand that it is the junk fats that create a problem, right? When you're eating too much bacon, too much butter, and not enough vegetables, that's when your blood work looks terrible on a low carb diet. Okay, we have to understand that. So let's hop over into some questions. Dean says, what are some health benefits you expect from going from high refined sugar to well, I mean, some of it should be somewhat apparent. Your diabetes goes away. No, I mean, the joking aside, Dean, Some of it isn't immediately fixable. Just because you cut the refined sugar out doesn't mean you undo all the damage it did. You should see some improvements, like your triglycerides should go down, your insulin sensitivity should improve. But if you've already accumulated, say, visceral fat, okay, if you accumulated a bunch of visceral fat from it, you're still going to have to lose weight and diet that visceral fat off. It's not going to disappear. Your non-alcoholic fatty liver isn't going to disappear just because you quit growing it. It's still going to be there. You're actually going to have to diet it off. But at least you won't be adding more. But usually you should see an improvement in your inflammatory markers, your insulin sensitivity. All of that stuff should happen relatively quickly. Alan says, but if someone only drinks fat-free milk and adds a bit of butter to their oatmeal or bread, is it? Here's the problem, Alan. Butter is still not normal milk fat. Okay, I mean, that would be like saying, could you add a bunch of refined hydrogenated oils? Okay. Keep in mind, Alan, do you think butter is the same fat that's in milk? Structurally speaking, do you think, and this is a serious question, chemically, does it look the same? In other words, when you take a stick of butter, does it look like milk? If you skim the cream off of milk, it's a liquid. Butter is a solid at room temperature. Do you think chemically it's the same substance anymore? But here's the other point, Alan. Why would you do this to yourself? Like, why add the refined fat anyways? Why not just add something else to it? Why not just add some milk to your coffee in that case? And that way you get all the benefits of the milk. You're not going to get me to tell you that it's okay to eat a bunch of refined fat. How's that? So that you can't catch me slipping and flip-flopping. See, because if I go the opposite and Jason says you shouldn't eat these things, but then you create a hypothetical scenario, now you're making me flip-flop. We're not going to do that. I'm going to stand my ground. All right. Matt says, I like how you've gone after honey too. A lot of fitness people. Yeah, I mean, and Matt, it's one of those things. It's one of those things where honey does have some health benefits. It doesn't remove the refined fructose from it. Okay. Just like wine. Okay. Does wine have tons of polyphenols from the grapes? Are those polyphenols have all sorts of cardioprotective and anti-inflammatory benefits? Of course they do. Does it still have ethanol in it? Because it's wine? Yeah. So it's the same thing with honey. There's some serious beneficial antioxidants and other stuff, particularly things for allergens and stuff, in honey. Still loaded full of refined fructose, though. Lou says, thanks for the truckload of info, Jason. It's been a long time here, and I just wanted to thank you and congratulate you on the great physique. You've mentored a lot of us. Well, thankful. Lewis, man, I appreciate it, brother. I appreciate that, and I'm just glad that I've been helpful to you. And I'm going to continue to try to do my best to be so. Marcus says, if someone has a healthy body fat percentage active, is junk food still bad? Yes. Liberty, in 6 months of weight training, my waist went from 220 to 200. My waist from 44 to 40. Nice. Most importantly, my blood work came back great from the previous time. Liberty, that's a win. Okay, there's a win. You look sexier and you're healthier at the same time. Isn't that a perfect outcome? Alan, as you buy, this is whole milk right here in this cup. That answers that. It is the Mutopia, which is identical to Fairlife, but it is whole milk technically. It's just been ultra filtered. Michael Green says, hi, Coach. Well, hello, Michael. Hey, Jason, when bodybuilders say add healthy fats, isn't that important for testosterone optimization? No. Do you have evidence of that? I mean, it's a nice hypothesis. Why are you worried about testosterone production? Why don't you just worry about your health? Hey, here's where I've made a lot of videos on that. Why are you worrying about a single hormone instead of realizing that low testosterone is a side effect of bad health? It's the side effect. Worry about your health. Let the testosterone sort itself. Adam says, how are you liking the walking over the bike? I like it a lot more. Hence why I'm doing it. Do you think you had a fourth rep in the deadlift an extra 5 seconds? Probably. I could have probably rest paused a fourth rep. Sure. But I wanted to just do straight sets, man. Straight set to failure. Straight set to failure. I mean, people want to talk about high intensity training. Dude, I just loaded up 550 on the deadlift and did it until I failed a rep in the middle of the rep. If we want to use the term training intensity, I think that's a 10 out of 10. Does it get any more intense than loading 550? Yeah, loading 800. Loading 550 on a deadlift bar and walking over with just a belt and chalk and repping it to failure. Until you strain and miss a rep in the middle and it just comes down. That's intensity, guys. And you know what? It wasn't that fatigue. It wasn't that bad. I did a whole workout afterwards with, how many more sets, whatever it was, 8, 9, this was 2 more. So like 14 more sets afterwards. Bunch of them to failure. Get in and get it done. Dude, that third rep was actually hard. I knew I wasn't going to get the fourth, but I went for it because I'm like, man, let me just dig in. I gave it everything I had. Like I told myself in my head I was going to get that fourth rep. But my body said no. Do you prefer whole milk over fat-free? Depends on what I'm trying. I need calories still, sat nav. I need calories from something. Which is kind of the deal. That pull without straps. I do most of my pulling without straps. CC says, should I eat at maintenance or a slight cut? I'm 6 foot 225. Was it advanced or before a couple month layoff? Ooh, if you're at 25%, I would go ahead and do a small cut. I would do a small cut just because you're 25%, Get into a healthy range. 25% is unhealthy. Get into the healthy range, then you could recomp, right? You could maintain and recomp from there. Get under 20% though. That I think for men, there's really no excuse to be over about 20%. Get under 20% no matter what before you worry about other stuff. And that's just for your basic health. Yes, I'm aware I've been above 20% on camera. I'm correcting my previous position. Lewis says, what are your thoughts about a stomach bypass surgery? A lot of my sedentary colleagues vouch for it, but I'm completely against it. Healthy food plus K-Cows counting will do so much mentally and physically. Lewis, that's a case-by-case basis. I mean, I'm going to say, realistically speaking, everyone should try a healthy diet and exercise before they even consider something like a stomach bypass. Like that really, I'm not against it. I want to be clear. If the doctor thinks it's the best thing and the person has failed at all the other stuff, at that point, their life is on the line. It's a risky surgery. You can die from that surgery, but you're also going to die from being 100 pounds overweight. And if you can't get rid of it any other way, it makes sense. It should be viewed, and again, you say colleagues, so I'm going to assume you're in the medical industry, right? I'm going to go out and say, in my unprofessional opinion, because I am not a medical doctor, I'm a fitness expert, I'm going to say it should be a last resort. But to say never, obviously there's going to be cases where it becomes necessary as the last resort. right? But it really should be a last resort. Everything else has failed. So then we do this invasive surgery. But if you're a medical professional, you're going to agree with me as a fitness professional. Lifestyle intervention and preventative medicine is king, right? Really is king, and that will solve most of our problems. Of course, people joke and say, well, medical doctors would be out of work. No, they wouldn't, because people do dumb stuff. They're going to break legs and have accidents and fall. I mean, we're going to need medical doctors, I can assure you. But it's funny people bring that up, because every medical doctor I've ever talked to in person happens to agree, hey, man, people should just live better lifestyles. Why? Because contrary to those stereotypes, most medical doctors actually take their oath seriously to protect life. In my personal experience dealing with doctors over the years, the overwhelming majority of them really take that oath seriously. It's not bullshit to them. Lo and behold, that's why they choose to go into the profession instead of a different high-paying profession. They're usually intelligent enough they could have done something different, right? They went into it because they had a calling for it. And they probably genuinely really do want to help people. But a lot of them are more than happy to make a ludicrous amount of money while helping people. I don't see a problem with that, by the way. Have you heard of polarity fitness? Yeah, I don't agree with this style of training. I'm familiar with it now, somewhat. Is core important in combat sports in terms of strength? Yeah, it's pretty important. I mean, realistically, if you're going to be in a combat sport where you're going to take blows to your abdomen, common sense would dictate having a strong core would be a really good idea. I mean, let's set that aside. Let's set aside even being a strength expert. I mean, common sense, right? Common sense would dictate, yeah, it'd be a good idea, right? Wouldn't Ozempic be preferable to a bypass? I would think so. Again, Liberty, I am not a medical doctor, but I did sleep at a Holiday Inn Express last night. And I would think Ozempic would be preferable to an invasive surgery, given a choice between the two. Again, we kind of come back over to, a little bit of common sense. I see Alex Leonidas is still trying to get people to bulk up to 20%. He says bulking is not dead, never will be. I don't think you need to bulk. I don't think people need to be over 15%. All right. So let me step back and let's not make it Jason Blaha's opinion. Okay? Because people are like, I don't care what Jason Bloho, fatty boom batty, fat powerlifter with no veins says. Okay. How about Lyle McDonald? Lyle McDonald said that. He's pretty smart. He's a pretty smart dude. I think he's pretty smart. I mean, just my opinion. I think he's a smart guy. He's always said the same thing. You don't bulk over 15%. When you get to 15%, it's time to cut, dude. It's like your nutrient partitioning and insulin sensitivity is going to be a lot better. I don't feel like getting into a whole diatribe with Mark stuff. Mike gives a lot of good stuff. He gives a lot of marketing. It's hit or miss. I really enjoyed Mike's nutrition book. I don't like a lot of his marketing viewpoints on periodization. I gave his nutrition book, his first one, a 5-star review, though, and I still stand by that. He sent me a copy, asked me to review it, give an honest opinion. Like I wasn't paid, there was no compensation. It was, hey, if I send you this, would you please just give an honest free review? And so he gave me a copy. And I reviewed it and I gave it 5 stars. It was actually really good. And that was, again, an unbiased, unpaid review, dude. It was a good book. All right. Alan says, fun fact, 1 gallon whole milk is equivalent. Yeah, dude, I am not telling you to drink a gallon of milk. But it's not the equivalent of butter, though, is it? Because butter is a different chemical structure. The churning is a mechanical process that changes it at the molecular level. If we use that logic, then if I take a refined vegetable oil, we can say X amount of soybeans are the equivalent. You see the problem? We changed it at the molecular level. Butter's been changed molecularly. Even if you don't know anything about chemistry or different processes and don't understand that mechanical processes are a chemical process, let's set that aside. Assume you don't know that. Let's assume you didn't finish high school. You failed high school, dropped out, and you don't know that. It's a solid at room temperature. Milk and heavy cream are liquid at room temperature. We're now at 5th grade level, elementary school level science. There's 3 states we've got: liquid, gas, and so, right? You remember that when you were, in elementary school? Something has changed here molecularly, just saying. All right. Are you allowed knee wraps and deadlift? No, you're not. Steve, hey, Jason, I completed 2 wheels at 3x10 with 225. You know how to calculate my max. I don't know if you can fully calculate it all that. We start getting into 10 rep sets, it's hard. I would say 315, though, is probably reasonable. I don't even know what exercise, by the way. I don't know if that's the barbell curl or the deadlift. Probably the bench, though. Hey, Alan. I'm not going to advocate that you eat junk food. I'm sorry. Benjamin says, do you think all Hollywood actors, especially the big name stars, take steroids? No, I think most of them do. I mean, Benjamin, here's what I would ask you. Are Hollywood actors as a demographic known for their clean, straight edge living? They abstain from using any form of unhealthy substance, right? Like Hollywood is known for its bastions of sobriety and clean living. They abstain from alcohol. They abstain from party drugs. They abstain from marijuana, right? That's what they're known for, clean living. So they obviously wouldn't take drugs that are safer than alcohol to enhance their career and make millions of extra dollars. Here's the rule I use. As a general rule, here's one I always give you. Any person who claims that they don't use steroids for health reasons, but they drink alcohol, 100% chance of steroid user. Let me state that again, because you've caught them in a lie. All right. Anyone who drinks alcohol, even in moderation, who is a lifter, who claims they avoid steroids because they're unhealthy, I will bet everything I have that they're a steroid user. In fact, give me 20 of them, and let's say I bet $100,000 on each one. I'm gonna make millions of dollars. Because even if I get unlucky and lose one of them, just one of them, I'm gonna win the other 19. That's a real safe gamble, guys. Why? Because it's very well documented that alcohol in moderation is still more dangerous than testosterone. This is very easily provable. So if they're claiming they don't do it for, well, that's whatever. If they drink, they're a liar. Straight up liar. Guarantee you, every time. So it's about just seeing consistency. Because again, they know that for lifting purposes, they're going to get a lot out of the gear. It's going to really take them up. They're not going to avoid it unless they have a reason. And they know that's a fake reason if they drink alcohol. Every time. All right. If I had to guess, Hollywood actors are more likely to take weight loss drugs. Liberty, why would you say that? You're talking about the ones who lift and who are known for being in shape? But you do realize that gets classified all together, right? Like everyone counts that as enhanced. No one goes, oh, that's not it. It's Clint is considered enhanced. Like you're an enhanced lifter if you use Clint. Everybody knows this. Like nobody thinks you're natural. Are dips really the squat of the upper body? No, not really. I don't push dips that much anymore. I'm not saying they don't offer great development. It's that the risk to reward. Just you get hurt too easy with no terminal stop. I don't even push them as much these days. I used to take that position, and I do understand biomechanically why I said that, and in certain ways they are. But it's a case of the juice isn't always worth the squeeze, so to speak. I mean, it doesn't make it untrue. So let's be clear, Harris. Dips work a lot of muscles. And just like the squat, they work a lot of stabilizers. So it is to some degree a true statement, right? It's not an untrue statement. So let me be clear on that. I'm not saying I was wrong because in that case, technically they were. But if I have to then look at the lift instead of from that perspective, a cost of benefit analysis, I generally don't support them. And it's not because they don't work. They clearly work. They are, in a lot of ways, a squat of the upper body, right? And that's fair. I mean, look at it with what's happening mechanically. But the pec tears and shoulder injuries happen easier on it than on most weight. So again, the case of is the juice worth the squeeze? Maybe not, unless you're doing it as a secondary exercise. You know, like you rep them out with high reps after you bench or something. That makes a lot of sense. Setnav, would you consider alcohol to be a poison for the body? My opinion's irrelevant. Setnav, my opinion and your opinion on that's completely irrelevant. That is a biological fact. Let me state that again. My opinion and your opinion on that is completely irrelevant. What you just said is a biological, provable medical fact that no one who studied biology can actually deny without looking like an ass clown. So what is there to argue? It is documented not only to be a poison, we can measure the poison load on the liver. Like there's no debate about that. The debate is how much can you consume before it becomes dangerous? Not that it's a poison. We know it's a poison. It has a measurable toxic response in the liver that we can literally measure in the lab. It is a poison. It is literally chemically a poison to the human body. What we debate is it safe to drink any amount? The current scientific literature says the amount that will fit on your pinky is enough to increase cancer. May not be enough to poison you, but it's enough to increase cancer. Dean says, I've noticed some really strong lifters have massive legs from the front, but not the side view. I don't know what you're talking about. No, Dean, I haven't found that to be the case. And I've been to a lot of powerlifting meets. I've judged a lot of powerlifting meets. I don't know what you're talking about. I think that you need to go to 5 or 6 powerlifting meets and then come back and tell me that statement. I'm gonna call bullshit. I can't think of a single strong person I have ever met anywhere in a lifting competition who matches what you just described. I can't think of one, not from my memory. Out of the hundreds I've met and watched lift in competition, I mean, I've been at some meets that had 200, 300 people competing. I've not seen this. So, sorry, I'm just going to disagree there. I think you haven't been around very many strong lifters then. Keeping in mind the context, a man who deadlifts 450 isn't strong, by the way. You start deadlifting 600, 700, 800, 900, actual big numbers. I don't see these people. I don't know who you're talking about. Girls who deadlift 400, okay. They fall in that strength category, but they don't have those legs either. Satnav, would you like to see alcohol phase out of society? I know you're big on personal freedom, but no, I don't believe taxing it is the answer. Satnav, let me give you two different answers. If you made me the president right now, right, instead of Donald Trump, you said Jason Blaha is now president and dictator of the People's Democratic Republic of America. Producing alcohol as a manufacturer would be treated the same as meth, which means a death penalty. All right, execute. Would be my call. Then the problem will go away. What I don't believe in is taxing people for stuff. So that's the other end. I'm not big on taxation. So you want to talk about a scam? Let's take an addictive substance. Let's slap a tax on it. State that again. How do you tax the poor? How do you tax people who are in poverty? Tax stuff that's addictive. That's a tax on the poor. That's a tax on the working class. Does their addiction go away because you tax them? Or do you drive them into worse poverty? I can't support that. So essentially, what you would do would be to tax the hell out of the poor into more poverty, and the amount of drinking would stay the same. In fact, because they're poor and depressed, they might drink even more. Smoking itself is bad for you. Are there potential health benefits to some of the cannabinoids? There's a lot of emerging, Lacey, no, look at that objectively as science. Like objectively, like set aside biases, especially stuff like PTSD. Okay, Lacey, I know you're conservative. Okay, so how about veterans with PTSD? How about sex abuse survivors of PTSD? There's pretty good data showing it helps. In fact, even Texas, that's the only thing we've legalized it for is PTSD treatment medically. Okay. So, and there's stuff that happens with the brain and other stuff. There is some possible anti-inflammatory benefits to things like CBD. Right? And we have to take that emerging science seriously. Now, is smoking things good for you? No, smoking anything itself is bad for the lungs and bad for other things. So the question becomes then, are we talking about, are there some health benefits to certain parts of it? Or are we talking about, is smoking something a good idea? Well, that's two completely different topics, isn't it? That happen to have a degree of overlap. How's that for a fair answer? If we're going to be intellectually honest, right? How much of the health benefit from weight training will one lose if they were to stop training? A lot of it, over half of it, because your legs have the most muscle. You get more benefits from training your legs than the upper body for health benefits. Fun fact, some testosterone have used ethanol. Yeah, but it's such a small amount, Alan. I mean, realistically, and it's not a fun fact, benzyl alcohol, benzylbentonate. So do the math on it. If a person were to inject pro bodybuilder level testosterone, right, like 10 grams a week. Okay, let's say your TRT amount's 100 milligrams, so they do 100 times that amount, right, at 10 grams. How much alcohol would they get? And then compare that to a shot of whiskey. It would be like 1% of what's in the shot of whiskey. I'm not saying that's not there, but we're definitely in very, very small amounts. Jason, I adhere to the Stephen A. Smith probably stay off the weed. Again, barring these things like PTSD and stuff, though, right? Lacey, I just think most people. Well, Lacey, you aren't wrong. Okay. Lacey, you're not wrong, and I do think that's a big part of it, and I think that's the case. But let's set that aside. Does that remove the medicinal benefits? But what about the high for the people with the PTSD? Is that part of the help? That's what's being debated. And again, we come over to the anti-inflammatory stuff. I'm going to agree with you, right? Okay. So I'm gonna agree with you on one point and then disagree on the other. And again, I think we can have an honest conversation with this. If we're talking the anti-inflammatory benefits potentially of the CBD, I'm gonna 100% agree with you. Let me state that again. If that is what we're talking about, I am 100% in agreement with you. No disagreement. Your point is completely valid. Fair? Like, I'm just going to say flat out, yep, you're right. I don't think they can even be debated that you're wrong. Not reasonably. For the mental benefits for things like the PTSD, I don't know that that's true. There's some data saying it may be that part of the high is part of it, because again, we're dealing with psychological factors of people who have been traumatized. And we know that trauma even affects brain chemistry, right? It affects structure of the brain chemistry. I think there's a lot more nuance to that. I don't think that we can say that statement. Absolutely. I think the anti-inflammatory, we absolutely can. No, you hit the nail on the head. And I think your point's valid there. The psychological benefits, are we going to remove the psychological impact of those substances in regard to the psychology? I don't know that we can do that. Could we argue, well, it's partially been an escape for them? Yeah, we could make that case, but then we also have to go, does someone who's reliving trauma in their head on a loop, do they need that escape? Like if the person is reliving their trauma, the abuse they suffered, the horrific abuse, or reliving war, and they can't turn that cycle off. Do we want to allow them that escape? Is that case, is that a potentially valid escape? Especially when you're dealing with that type of trauma to where they're in that trauma loop. Because that's serious stuff. I mean, like you said, what you described, you've known those people, you've dealt with them. Right? You've seen what it does to people. Okay. So it's just food for thought. But it's like everything else. A lot of these things are not clear cut and dry. They're complex issues. They're complex issues that we have to have a serious talk about and discussion as a society. But we've got to have a mature discussion about those things. And we've got to be careful of how dogmatic we get with those discussions. And again, there are important things to discuss. And that's where we hopefully, and I say hopefully, have good experts who can give good advice and give medical advice to lawmakers and other people. That doesn't always happen, unfortunately. It would be nice if it always worked that way, wouldn't it? But it's not always the case when we deal with laws and politics and politicians and business and money. In a perfect world where if our system operated as it was supposed to, that's how it would happen. We live in an imperfect world, unfortunately. Which, of course, some people handle combat better than others. And for those people, great. What about the ones who didn't? We can't just sweep them under the rug. I mean, we can, but it's not morally right. Let me rephrase it. We can do that. That's an option. But are you going to feel good about that? I mean, people handle trauma different. Let's take any trauma as trauma. Okay. We know from the brain that the trauma of war, the impact on the brain isn't different from the trauma of, say, sexual assault. Okay. For example, when we look at what it does to the brain, it's the exact same effect. Chemically, structurally, So we come over to that. Different people handle different trauma differently. And we have to address it that way. If we want solutions to these things. Because I can tell you right now, neither one of those things are going away in your or my lifetime. Right? Do you predict that at any time in your lifetime, war, violence, sexual assaults, any of those things are going to go away? So, and those things can help, but are you sure that's everything? I mean, Lacey, I've seen the opposite. I don't want to go into too much of my personal life, but people who follow my Facebook saw all of it. My cousin Daryl, 20 years special forces, one of my closest friends and family members. Like, we were really close. And people who saw the Facebook realized that, because even his wife said that on there. I watched him suffer enormously from his PTSD. Okay. He had solid family values. He was in church every Sunday. He was a devout Christian. He prayed. He believed. Okay? We'll make that clear. PTSD fucking killed him. So, now, do those things help? Yes. They help. Are they going to always fix it? I'm going to point at my cousin and say, clearly not. Now, he did die of heart disease, but his wife, who has a PhD, even got in and said that was exacerbated. The stress of it, the whole thing, what she called it is operator syndrome, it contributed to lifestyle factors. Keeping in mind, he died of a heart attack at 39, not overweight. That's how severe it was. He literally died of a massive heart attack with severe atherosclerosis. But then we look at it and go, was it all due to coping with the PTSD? Was it the all the medications they had to put him on? Like the list was this long: the self-medication, the drinking, the stress. You know, and he was a strong person. But even his wife said, yeah, it was the operator syndrome. And they know that because you don't die when you're 220 and 39 and in shape, you don't die of a heart attack. He deadlifted 600 pounds and ran every day. He was in shape. So, you have to look at it from that perspective. But, the meds and everything, like I saw some of it, it's like, it was insane. But he had to have it. Like, he just couldn't function without it. But he saw some stuff, Yeah, Olaf, but you don't develop high blood pressure and atherosclerosis at a healthy body weight under normal. It's not just bad luck, Olaf, in that case. I saw the autopsy. But we come back to, things like the PTSD. So we have to look at that, though, and go, we can't just assume that a good upbringing in your faith is going to get you 100% through it. Now, did those things help him to some extent? I think they did. Okay. I do believe they helped him. It just wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. Did it allow him to probably live long enough and to not take his own life? Yes, and that was a blessing. Okay, that was a blessing because it could have gone the other way a lot sooner. Alan, I needed to see it because I was one of the last two people to see him alive. I saw him 4 hours before he died. I hung out with him 4 hours before he died. I had pictures and stuff. I literally have pictures of hanging out with him the night before he died. I got to give him a hug, tell him I'd see him tomorrow. We had plans the next day. We were going to hang out after I got done lifting. So I didn't want to read it, but I demanded a copy. I demanded it. I needed to see it. Because, and this is still a fitness topic, because this was a fit athlete. But I think it goes to show on these topics of fitness, different stressors and these other factors, how do they play in? And we went deep in this one, didn't we? We went deep. Both my brothers. Yep, Lacey, I'm glad that you have them back, and you should count it as a blessing from God that you still have both of them. That's something that I would say to you. You can thank God for. So, for the record, get rid of Olaf. My cousin thought that was hilarious. He thought it was hilarious and he loved it. We were super close. So, for the record, his bros thought it was hilarious. They had no problem with me at all. Really. All right. in general, is your protein and calorie intake on rest days more or less? No, I don't change it. I don't change my intakes on the different days. So there's no need to do that. All right, guys, we're it's 50 minutes in. I'm gonna go ahead and wind this down. I hope it's been informative. I love all of you guys and gals, and I will talk to you next time. Let me give you guys a water shot before we go. See all those veins getting lean.